Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So it looks like Alberta's finally getting its pipeline to BC, not through the northern route, which I think is great for both parties. Like, finally, I don't know why Danielle Smith was really pushing towards that area, especially with the tanker ban. And if you really looked on the coastline and where they want to load and unload ships or whatever, and bring the crude to the Asian market, it's a disaster. The tidal waves, the tidal changes, storms, how close it is to the coast, navigation. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it opened. It'd be an accident the first year. But the one to Roberts Bank in near Vancouver is already tried and tested, and they're going to be going along the same route as the Trans Mountain Pipeline because they've already got two lines there, and it's the same length. It's the cost would be the same. So again, I don't understand why she was pushing for the north. But I digress on that. So they came to an agreement to go to Roberts Bank. It makes sense. I think this is too little, too late in terms of timing, especially where the world market is going in terms of EVs. There's a bunch of articles that are showing, especially because of what's going on in Iran, the Strait of Hormuz. Um, People are switching over to EVs. China is basically has been doing this for years. Most of Europe is on its way. They've seen an increase anywhere, depending on what region we're talking about, anywhere from 50 to 80% year over year increase on new EV sales. China is taking over the automotive market. They're not taking it over with brand new fuel vehicles or trucks. They're selling EV personal vehicles and electric trucks. They're selling it in Europe. They're selling it in Africa. They're selling it in Asia countries. They're selling it in Australia. Australia's seen a 24% increase in EV sales year over year. A lot of it is the Chinese markets or the Chinese manufacturers. Central America, South America. So the European manufacturers, the original OEMs, same thing with North America, are understanding, even though they're telling you we're still making V8s, four cylinders, superchargers, whatever. Ford recently, um, you saw one of its prototype vehicles, camouflage and everything else. They were taking pictures, but it's a new EV truck, pickup truck, smaller one. It's not their like full size, 150 150, but they're bringing back another EV truck because they screwed up on the Ford Lightning. People are tired. They're tired of fluctuating fuel prices, what's happening overseas as opposed to what's going on here locally. We here in Canada produce more than what we use. I believe it's 9 million barrels a day compared to the 5 we use. So, why are we paying outrageous numbers? It's because we're tied to the global market. So, even if we had this new pipeline that they've been talking about for years, and the one that they're going to do supposedly to Ontario 15 years ago, we would still be paying high prices at the pump. And taking the oil out of the oil sands is more expensive than anywhere else in the world. So when the oil prices come down, the revenue shrinks, and a lot of the producers will stop removing oil from the oil sands until it goes back up. Even in 2025, Alberta shipped more oil than they ever have and still had a negative, they had a deficit of $9 billion in their budget. Why? Because the cost of oil was low and they hedged it against the royalties that during it, and they didn't get as much. And 20% of their economy is in the oil sands. So that's why, economically, this would make more sense, especially for the one that they're proposing to go Ontario now. But this one makes the most sense because they're using an existing route, which already has all the environmental studies done, the infrastructure to bring the equipment in, somewhat of the agreements with the the indigenous community because they have no issues with the ones with the current two lines that are going that route. So there shouldn't be an issue with the adding a third line in the same route. It'll be just more negotiating of royalties and what they can get. Okay. So it's going to move a lot faster. But even with that, because of the transition to EVs and over 60% of crude from a barrel. So you got 1 barrel of oil, 60% of that barrel is used for transportation. Over 40% is used for small vehicles like gasoline, and another 25% is used for diesel. So when everybody starts transitioning to EVs, both in personal vehicles and in diesel transportation, and don't tell me they're not because they're doing it in Europe. We're not far behind from what happens in Europe, starts happening here in North America. Over 60% of required crude will drop. Not next year in 2 years, but in the coming years, big chunks of that demand will drop off. So by the time maybe this one will be profitable for 5 to 8 years, but then after that, economically, they'll start reducing the flow in the lines because it won't matter. We won't require the need to ship as much oil. So this is I listen, Daniel Smith has always argued where the rest, well, Canada or the federal government's always, limited them in terms of utilizing their natural resources. I think she squandered the opportunity to make her province stronger. I think she should have used the revenue generated from the oil sands to diversify her economy, but she's doubling down on more oil, more production, which is going to cost the province more in the long run. Will they see a payback because this will be public funding for this new oil line? You've got the toxic holding ponds from the process of extracting the oil sands, the bitumen from the oil sands, the oil from the oil sands. You've got wells where the oil companies have leases with farmers, okay? Not honoring those leases, not paying the royalties or the lease rate, abandoning those wells, and then the government is responsible to come and clean up, even though there's a fund where companies need to pay into so that if they go belly up, which most of them do, and then they abandon the wells, that there's money in a fund to close them properly. They're behind. Thousands of wells they're behind because they cut the requirements for those oil companies to pay into that fund. And then you've got stories of farmers who have active wells from an oil company where you've got toxic fumes coming from it, making the animals sick, making the farmers sick that live in the area. And the oil companies are not doing anything to address it. So why would you want to double the capacity of an industry that are not even taking care of the people? She needs this win anyways, and that's why she's going with it. That's why she's agreed to the Roberts Bank route, Trans Mountain Canada Line route, because her popularity is going down the tubes from her giving a platform to the separatists, even though they represent a small minority of Albertans, and the other 65-70% of Albertans who don't want to separate from Canada, who don't think this referendum is necessary, who don't want to spend it was 60 million or 100 million they're projecting that's going to cost to do this referendum, or a question to know if they need to do a referendum. The healthcare is suffering there, infrastructure suffering there. And what was it? It was Highway 63 in Alberta. Okay, there's a story how protesters not shut down, but isolated a portion of Highway 63 going to Fort McMurray to fill in potholes because they're taking forever. The infrastructure, they're not filling it. And Highway 63, from what I could read, is a vital transportation corridor. What they call it, they say it's an all-season corridor. Okay, for Fort McMurray, for the oil sand industry, commerce, heavy equipment, and everything else. And they can't even fill potholes for that vital infrastructure transportation. What makes you think they can do a pipeline properly? So this is a bit of a mess. I wish them the best of luck in terms of. I think I'll be honest with you. The only winner out of this, well, you got Mark Carney, a bit of a winner because he's brought BC and Alberta to the table and both to agree. But David Eby is also the biggest winner here because I don't know if he's going to be like their province. From what I can read, they're not spending any money on this pipeline, but they were given federal funds for infrastructure to help increase the output of natural gas. Their uh, uh, their system there to ship to the Asian community or Asian countries and markets. Um, he wins. He like his not spending taxpayer money, and he was given money from the federal government for projects that will benefit British Columbia. So even if, let's say, what I'm saying is correct and it happens within the timeline that I think it's going to happen, and these pipelines, especially the oil pipeline, not the natural gas, because that will be really the last, that will be because a lot of people use natural gas for many different reasons. But even if what I say happens in that timeline, BC's not out. Their economy is not reliant on the oil sands or production of natural gas. They're just a cog in the wheel. So they lose nothing and they didn't invest anything. So he's also, I think, the biggest winner out of the three parties. Anyways, let me know what you think. Do you agree that the EVs are going to really hinder this projects and the feasibility or the payback period, or do you think I'm out to lunch and of course that the EVs will never take off, even though all the numbers are showing it, and around the world everybody's adopting it? Let me know what you think in the comments, and take care. We'll talk later.